What do we make of the decision on this executive order, and where does that leave Congress tomorrow in some kind of broader vote on immigration?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right. Well, this issue has obviously created a national firestorm that has roiled the Republican Party, that has roiled the White House, and that has sparked enormous amounts of criticism from Democrats. That is what led to President Trump signing this executive order today, which I read some of the text of the order. What it does is it requires the Attorney General to file a motion in court that would clarify the Flores settlement from 1997 in a way that would allow the administration to detain children with their parents in criminal detention facilities. Right now, there are restrictions on, what they can do in terms of detainment of children. There are rules on the books that protect the rights of children, and as a result, previous administrations like the Obama and Bush administration have decided to use civil prosecution to make sure the families are not separated. The Trump administration is going this route, and we should expect a legal challenge from the immigration lawyers that say this is still not the way to go. The advocates who say we don't need to, take away the rights of kids, and they're not going to be happy with this.
Yeah, let's drill deeper into that point, because part of the argument that the administration had made previously to this is that they were compelled to separate families on the basis that kids couldn't be held in detention for longer than 20 days. And if you're going to detain the parents, then you have no choice. So how do you square that circle where you detain them without also violating the limits on how long you can detain children?
Right. Well, this is where the administration has a choice to make. It has to prioritize. Does it want to keep families together, which would require civil prosecution and which would require, prosecutorial discretion on whether to do a maximum 100% criminal prosecution for everyone who crosses the border, or does it, go that route of criminal prosecution for everyone at the risk of separating families? The Obama and Bush administrations looked at this and said they're not going to go the route of separating families, so they went the civil prosecution route. Now, the problem with that is that in many cases, the rights of children, including the 20-day rule, require releasing the kids after a certain period of time, which the administration calls catch and release. They say asylum seekers who enter the U.S. illegally or improperly end up having to be released into the country as they await their hearings. Some of these people never show up for their hearings and simply disappear into the country and stay here illegally. So the administration wants to end that. It's not an obvious or easy choice, but the Trump administration is the first a group of people who looked at this and said they're going to go the route that ends up separating families.
Sahil, I have two questions. First of all, a follow-up to that quickly. Do we have any idea what the actual numbers are of the people who don't return? And then back to Julia's question, is there a prayer of a legislative remedy actually getting through on this?
Well, firstly, there are studies that show it's a minority of people who don't show up for their hearings. The people who cross into the border with asylum claims, they want to get legal status, they want to get right with the law. They don't. Nobody really wants to live in the shadows, in perpetuity and indefinitely. So the studies show it's a minority of people. As far as a legislative solution, it's going to be an important one to watch, because we know Congress has the authority to clarify this law. It's not clear that the administration has the ability to do this by itself. The prospects for this legislation that House Republicans are going to be considering likely tomorrow are dim. I spoke to a senior member of the House Republican vote counting team, and they said they still do not have the votes as of a few hours ago, and they're encouraging the president to speak personally with a list of lawmakers that Steve Scalise, the majority whip, gave the White House to try to persuade them. Even if that bill does pass the House, it is going nowhere in the Senate. It needs at least 9 Democrats, and a more generous version of that got just 3 Democrats a few months ago. The only way Congress does something about this is if it puts a narrowly tailored solution to simply deal with family separations and forgets about, it doesn't do the wall, doesn't do legal immigration cuts, doesn't do all this extra money for border security and the diversity lottery and family sponsorships of immigration that Democrats oppose, and does simply a narrow solution that is acceptable to both parties on family separation. It's still plausible, but we don't know what that would look like at this moment.
Yeah, so it's basically treating short-term symptoms and not the ultimate cause, which has been the ongoing situation here as well, Sahil. But very quickly, you wrote a great article today looking at how this plays politically, and Democrats clearly against this. The majority, just more than 50% or so, support a tougher stance as far as immigration is concerned. And then you look at some of the swing states here as we go into the midterms. How do we think this is ultimately going to play out politically? Because it was an election-winning strategy to talk about immigration for this president.
It's a major dilemma for the president's party because they're caught between a Republican base that favors tough punishments, that favors the zero-tolerance policy according to numerous polls that have been out this week, and a majority of the American public that opposes it. It's been widely described as cruel and barbaric. Former CIA Director Michael Hayden compared it to Nazi Germany. I usually hate those analogies, but this is a former CIA director saying that. I spoke to John Lewis, who was a hero of the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. He said this is going to be one of the darkest hours in the nation's history, so there's an enormous amount of outrage here. But Republicans are caught between, voters who have no tolerance and no mercy, feel no mercy for the people who break immigration laws and want the harshest punishments for them. It's something that President Trump ran on, which is what led to this policy. And a majority of the American public who are appalled by these photos of young children, babies and toddlers ripped away from their parents.